Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. In the next few minutes I'm going to show you how we can take a project from first customer inquiry through to doing a site visit, sending a professional looking quote, scheduling a job, doing a timesheet, allocating materials used, and then invoicing the work we have completed. So everything will always start with a new inquiry, at which point I can do a search by the client, contact, or location. Let's say I'll search by client first. We'll take property management services. I can now see the different people who work for this company. Let's say this quote is for John, and it might be related to Paradise Towers for the Owners Corporation 3452. If it was a brand new site, I could simply click here on new location, add the details, and then the relationship between the location, the client, and the contact will be remembered forever after. At this point, I can track where our leads came from. Let's say they found us online and this inquiry is urgent. Once the inquiry has been saved, we can assign tasks to ourselves or people in the company, and we can write notes about what has been said during the last phone call or anything related to this inquiry. Once all this has been completed, I will move on to create an opportunity. Opportunity means we now have a project number, and this can result in future business. At this point, we would now go and see the customer on site, take photos through the mobile, and do field notes using voice to text. Once the site visit has been completed, we simply move on and create a quote. At the quote stage, we now track the version of the quote. So if there's any variations or revisions to this document, we can see which version we are currently looking at. I would highly recommend to always set a title so that when you're looking at quotes in a list format, you don't have to open each individual one up to see what the project is about. Let's say we're going to do some anchor installation, pressure washing, painting, and a final window clean. The quickest way to produce a quote is to simply import a quote template. At this point, you can have as many quote templates as you like. Let's say I will use my amazing anchor installation template as a base. And at this point, the system has imported for me what we call two composed items. A composed item is essentially, to the customer, it will look like a single line item. But to us, we can also then break it down and track, for example, the labor to install the system, the anchor points we need, and the chemical we'll need to set the anchors. Note, I can either modify individual quantities and just have it all as one price, which will give me here my resulting final figure, or I could use what we have here, where we have a calculating tool. So I can see I need half an hour to install each anchor, and I will need one anchor for each anchor point. If I now multiply this with 45, as I have up here, it calculates that we need 22.5 man hours to complete this work, and I'll need 45 anchor points in total. So these are my composed items. Let's move on and add some pressure cleaning. As you can see, we can have images with our items to make the searching easier. I'll add the pressure cleaning. At this point, I can make any changes to the text. We can do bold, italic, and change the color, use bullets, numbering systems, and even hyperlink text within the description to different websites. The magic of JGID happens here with these categories. So you see right now we've selected the category pressure cleaning. This is a totally customizable drop-down menu which can be tailored to suit exactly the nature of your business, and these categories will then create a whole deal of automation, which I'm going to show you in a second. I'm going to quote per man hour, but you could also quote per man day, week, per unit, etc. I recommend to stick with man hours because it makes it easier to compare estimated versus actual hours worked on a job. Let's say I'm going to have to work 16 man hours, so that could be 2 people for one day. My estimated cost per man hour is $60. I'm going to charge $95 per man per hour on the job, which gives me a total estimated cost of $960 with an estimated profit of $560 and a final value of $1,520. Save that, and I'm going to add some painting. And just for this example, actually, I've got the painting here as a due and charge. So the difference between due and charge and lump sum is a fixed price where the customer can't see the unit and quantity of units estimated. You'll only see a final price. Whereas if I do due and charge, it will charge as however many units we complete of work. So let's say I'm going to make this 0 man hours. So we'll just show the hourly rate per man or per person per hour to complete this work. And this will then be calculated based on the timesheets of the team entered. Note category painting. And now lastly, we shall add a final window clean. And for this example, let's just say we're doing 16 man hours again. Oh, sorry, 16. Now that I've added all my items, I would go through my checklist, at which point I can add any operational observations. So we already know that we work in heights and using ladders because this information came from the location. But now I shall also add an elevated work platform, rope access, and working at heights. And let's just, for the example, say we are also going to work in a confined space. Now that we've added our items and done the checklist, if I go to clauses, you see at the moment I've just had one clause here related to a deposit before we start our work. But now the system will automatically add all these additional clauses into the document for me based on the categories of work or access or environment that we've selected. Same will go for who will provide what. So if we refresh this, you can see now we're automatically also providing window cleaning equipment, pressure cleaning equipment, and the client, for example, needs to provide color specifications so that there's no disputes in regards to what color we're going to use on the job, and they will need to provide 2 sets of keys or swipe cards as required for safety reasons. Lastly, I'll go to the intro. If I need, I'll personalize the name of the person here. So let's say this was Dear John. And if I wanted, I could add here further pictures, replace the pictures with site-specific photos, etc., just to make sure everyone's on the same page in terms of what gets done. Okay, let's go and have a look at this quote that we've just created. Your logo will come here. These are your company details. These are the details that came from the new inquiry. We've got our cover page pre-written. You can see automatically what got written here in terms of what we, the contractor, will provide and what we expect others, including the customers, to provide. Here's our itemized quote. Item number 4 is a due and charge item, so you can see we're showing the quantity and the unit and the price per unit here, which gives us a total of 0. And then under here we have all our clauses which have automatically been added into the quote. We have a section with our basic terms and conditions. The client can sign off in here straight away via the email when we send them the quote. And then you have here your final terms and conditions, and after this you could add on an appendix talking about any other services your company might be able to provide as well. By the way, I forgot to mention, under the items here, if you ever wish, you can actually show the breakdown by clicking to group here, and what that does is it converts a composed item into what we call a sub-item group, so the client can actually see a breakdown of each line item. It's up to you if you want to show this or hide it. As long as it's got this icon and it's collapsible, you can hide it from the client. Even if you leave it expanded, the customer won't see it. If you show it like this, they will be able to see it, and it will go itemized onto the tax invoice as well. Just for now, I'm going to leave this so that you can see the 2 different examples. Let's say our quote has been completed. I can save a copy of this quote to Dropbox, go straight away into the right folder, and then I send the quote to my client. You can have all your emails pre-written, and when you send the quote, you can send this with a customizable link, so you can call this link whatever you like, where the client can click on and then sign this quote electronically. I'll hit send this to our client, and I'll next go to our customer inbox to show you what it would look like for the client when they sign the quote. So we're now in our customer inbox, where you can see they've just received the email with that customizable link that they can click on to approve the quote. By the way, a PDF is attached the conventional way to the email as well, so if they want to download it or print it out, they can do so. But let's now click onto this link so you can see what it's like for the client to sign this quote. They can review the whole document, again with all the who provides what and all the clauses added automatically. By the way, here you can see item 1 with the breakdown and the subtotal for the group of item 1, all our clauses that have been added automatically. And then this is where the client signs off. Let's say they are the director, they sign here, double check their email address, and then sign the quote, which will email the customer a signed copy of the quote, and you will also be notified. So like here you can see, well done, quote has just been approved. So that would be the email that you've received, and the customer will receive an email like this saying thank you for approval of the quote with a signed PDF attached. Okay, let's go back to our project. So back at home, the quote was sitting here in pending quotes to be followed up. Once the quote has been approved, it automatically gets moved into jobs in preparation. Also up here we have a timeline with notifications of everything that's ever happened in our system. So I can see here the quote has been approved. If it's got our logo next to it, that means it's been approved electronically and this job here has been created. Once I'm in the job, I can now see how many times this job has been done and which version of the quote we're working on and the overall project number. So if this is a recurring job, you might do weekly, monthly, 6 monthly or annually, this number will go up with every repetition. You can automatically have jobs being scheduled again when they're next due. Job status right now is preparation, which means we need a list of materials, a safe work method statement, and then we need to schedule some workers on the project. First thing is I will hit the generate button here, which means the system has pulled all the different items from my quote and made me a list of the materials and the tools and PPE that we need to do this work. I could continue adding to this checklist, which will then create for me a job hazard analysis. Right now all my hazards here are zeros. I simply click the generate button, and in a few seconds all the risks associated to anything that's on the checklist will be added here in our job hazard analysis. So you can see, for example, under access, elevated work platform has these hazards. These are the risk levels, these are the controls we put in place, and then these are the residual risk levels after the controls have been put in place and who's responsible for the implementation of these controls. In the interest of time, I'm going to just keep moving here. We can have a look at the signed document in a moment. Let's go to scheduling. So now that we're in the calendar, I can see here green, by the way, are the actual events of the job. The colors underneath are the people or the resources who've been allocated to each job. So that way I can nicely see everyone who's grouped around each project. Over here I've got a job queue with all the jobs that have been approved but not scheduled yet. Let's say the one we've just created together before. I'll drag it into today and we'll make that a 2-day job. And I'm going to add some workers to this project. For the purpose of this example, let's say Nick, and I'm going to have John D and Lee on this job. Hit add and save, and now these 3 people have been assigned to the job. By the way, if you move the job, it will move the whole crew with the job underneath. If you need to have a day off because it's a public holiday or a weekend, you can then simply continue on the job like this by using the assign job button. Search for the job number, client name or site name or the title, and then you can again schedule people through here. So I might say Ainsley and John and Lee. That way I can have a block of 2 days with this team, a day break, and then a block of 2 days with this team. The calendar can also be used for navigation, so you can just simply click here on go to job. So that takes me back to the job. At this point I might say preparation has been complete, which makes the job status pending. That way we know the job is ready to go, all the materials and people have been organized. We just have to wait for the day to come and hope that the sun shines on the day we want to work. So now here in front of us we have a mobile phone simulator. These are the 4 corners of my phone, so to speak. You can ignore the rest of the screen. I'm going to sign in as the employee user level. At this point, we can choose which account we're logging into. And now all your field staff will see is calendars, tasks, and they can check equipment out, check equipment in, and perform inspection of your equipment using our RFID add-on. For now, I'm going to stick to the calendar just to keep it this concise. When they log in to the calendar, all they can see is their own job, so they can't see everyone else's work unless you give them supervisor user level, which can't see any of the figures, but can see other people's calendars. We click on today's event. We'll be asked if we give permission to use the GPS. At this point, I've got a link to the maps, so I can click on maps, turn on my GPS drive to the job. I've got the mobile number for the site contact, a brief title of the project, so at a glance I can see what we're doing. And I can see who else has been scheduled on this block of work, so that if we need to arrange to go to work together in one vehicle, for example, we know who to contact. Once we're here, we have a job scope, which is essentially a copy of the quote less any pricing. We have the pick list that we've generated before. We can sign the job hazard analysis straight through the application. We can have PDF or Excel, Word document forms, etc. saved here as templates. Field notes is where we can add additional notes on the go, take photos, or where we can see the photos which have been taken from the estimator while he's looking at the job. What I'll do now is I'm going to clock in. We can clock everyone on the team in, so it doesn't have to be done individually if you've got people who aren't comfortable using a mobile phone. Once we've clocked in, we've gone green, so that way you can tell who has actually clocked into a job. And then at the end of the day, our workers will clock out. Again, this can be done in bulk. They've now gone orange, that way we know that the people have clocked out but haven't done a worksheet yet. So then we need to click onto this orange create worksheet button here. If we've all worked on the same items and had the same times, the timesheet can be done in a batch. Otherwise, at this point, we would recommend to do them individually. I'll create a worksheet, and here we made it really simple. One question at a time, step by step. Check the date, yes, today's date. Check your pay rate. This is a customizable drop-down menu that you can use if you like. The start time by default is the nearest 15 minutes when the person pressed the clock in button. But for this example, I'm going to say we started at 7, and let's say we actually finished at 3:30, and we had a 30-minute lunch break. No further breaks, no further allowances. Sometimes people use this for various allowances. I'll actually use this as an example for tracking my rope hours on site. And that now says we did 8 hours of work in total, and these 8 hours now need to be assigned to items on the scope. So I could say we did, for example, 2 hours of anchor installation. I'll say we did 2 hours of pressure washing, 2 hours of painting, and maybe also 2 hours of window cleaning. I know that is a bit split up and probably not quite realistic, but I just want to give you visuals on what it will look like once we're in the job. We can now do a DLS, which is a daily labor summary, essentially a docket where we can record any downtime that we had on site. We can take a note if we think it was the final day of the project today or not. Materials that have been used, I can say we used 10 of those and 10 of those, and I'll just say we used 10 of these as well. We can do any comments. This can all be done voice to text. For now, I'll just say OK. I'll skip the preview, go straight to finalizing. So now my leading hand signs here. The client can sign off underneath here. We finalize the daily labor summary, and in a few seconds this is actually going to save a document straight into the relevant Dropbox folder for me. Back in the office, I'm going to click on my Dropbox. I can see here my daily labor summary has just been saved. I'll open this up. Let me make this a bit bigger so you can see better. It's the first daily labor summary for the first repetition for the first version of this project. What got done: labor to install anchors, pressure cleaning, painting and window cleaning, by whom the work got completed, the unit of work we've done and the quantity. Any materials that got used are listed here, and then you get the total times for all your workers on site, plus all the signatures from our leading hand and our client. where the client approves that they have verified our hours of work, commercial terms and rates and conditions, they have inspected the area of work and agreed that they're happy with the work and that we haven't damaged the property in any way. This clause, by the way, again is customizable, so if you want to add or change anything in here, you can do so. Back on our current job, so you can see the job status has changed to current when the first person has clocked in. We now get visuals where you can see labor to install anchor points. We estimated 10 hours. We've actually only used 6. So we're winning here. I've got a pop-up over here as well. I can't put the mouse on the actual pop-up. But line item by line item, we can see estimated cost and profit on each line item. And then we also get the total estimated actual and billable total hours worked here. And then I can have estimated and actual final cost, profit, and total value of the job. You can see we estimated 13,115. The final price at this point is 13,775. That is because we've added here 6 man hours, which was the due and charge item, at $110 per hour, adding $660 to the final invoice. So the quickest way to finish a job is to simply press job completed, which will turn the whole job into a final invoice. Alternatively, what I can do is I can do a progress invoice and I can invoice certain items. Let's say we're going to invoice the anchor installation and the window cleaning for this example. I'll say complete, and that now makes me a tax invoice only for these sub items here. When it comes to billing, a lot of times also, especially when we're dealing with facility management companies or property agents, these people are actually only acting as the managing agent on behalf of an owner's corporation or some other ownership entity, which is usually related to the location. If I send the invoice made out to the property management services, John Wayne is going to send this invoice back to me and say, sorry mate, can't pay this invoice, can you please make it out to the owner's corporation? Because we deal with that a lot, we've built this feature where you can actually choose who you're going to bill. So let's say I'm going to bill the location, which now makes the invoice out to Paradise Towers, care of the agency and the person for works performed in this location. Let's, for now, just straight away say invoice completed. That invoice, when you see this button, has been pushed into my Xero account instantly. I'm going to preview it now, so just so you can see the final document. So we've got a tax invoice number, which is automatically generated. Our reference number is the number of the job. The client reference number could have been a work order or purchase order number that I can add in. Here, by the way, again, is that breakdown of my sub-item group, and here's my single line item, which we have invoiced. I can now go to all my related documents, so I can see here we've got an approved quote, the job is still current, and we have one progress invoice that has been invoiced so far. If I go back into my job, line item by line item, I can see what's already been invoiced, and if I say job completed, that will select all remaining items and make this into a final, in this case second, tax invoice, which if we have a look at the bigger picture, you can see the job's been completed. We have one invoice that's been invoiced already, and we've got one draft invoice that we need to finish and send to our client. Based on the worksheets that the guys have entered, this has now also made me timesheets. You can see here 3 timesheets related to this project. They're flagged pink, which happens automatically if there is a discrepancy of more than 15 minutes between the start time and the clock in time, or the end time and the clock out time. You can turn this setting off if you like, or you can even tune it as finely as a 5-minute discrepancy. That's up to you how closely you want to manage that. If I click onto this little map icon here, provided the GPS on the device was turned on, I can actually see where my workers were when they clocked in and where they were when they clocked out. On a weekly basis, we now recommend that operations manager or supervisors will check all the timesheet entries, and then we can see here in the total time we get a summary of the total hours by pay rate for each worker in this given date range. If we're happy with everything, we can lock dates, and then let's say yesterday was the last day of the timesheet. I lock this off until yesterday, and that now means that no one can add or change any timesheets in the past. And when our bookkeeper, accountant, or person who does the payroll logs in, they simply click on lock dates. They can see that this is locked until yesterday, which is their signal that they're good to go and process the payroll. There's obviously a lot more functionality in our system. We have reminders for tasks. We have an elaborate register management system where you can get reminders when pieces of equipment are overdue or due soon for inspection. Same goes for staff qualifications, etc. We have RFID integration and a lot more, but just in the interest of time, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to answer any questions going forward.